Hey, this is Micah, and in this video I'm going to show you the process for how we made the cartoon City of Venom. This is a cartoon that you can watch on the YouTube channel Mashed, and I'm going to be explaining this process to you through metaphors, because I tend to have a roundabout, overly drawn out way of explaining things, but it's just always been my style to not talk at all or start a sentence and not know where it's going to go. I think of animation as a tree, where you have the seed, which is your idea, and this idea is the outline or the script of your animation. So Mashed gave us this outline that had a bunch of gags and the general premise. I had a lot of creative freedom to make it into my own style and kind of craft a narrative out of just this raw material of ideas that Mashed supplied for us. So that was the seed. And the soil is the quality of the ideas and just the overall creative environment that your ideas are growing in. So if you plant a seed in poor soil where it's like a terrible work environment and your creativity isn't allowed to grow, the tree is going to grow into something not very good and produce fruit that is gross. So you have to have a good seed of an idea, but you also have to have the proper nutrients to foster that idea. You have to water it. So the water is the concept art and the character designs and figuring out the overall style. Watching a lot of Betty Boop cartoons and the early Mickey Mouse cartoons, we imagined mashing the Marvel universe with Fleischer Studios style. After you have the character designs figured out, you can go on to the thumbnailing and storyboard stage. All the animation is based on the designs. So if you design characters that are way too complicated, then you're gonna increase the amount of time and budget it takes to actually animate them. Because the rubberhose style was invented as much for its charm as it was its cost-saving effectiveness, because it's much easier to animate rounded and simple forms with noodly arms than it is to animate super realistic characters with joints and more realistic body proportions. So the first pass was a month of creating thumbnails. I was trying to figure out the shot types and the camera angles and just like the general screen direction. But then when I sent it to Mashed, one of the suggestions was that everything was way too up close, like it felt too claustrophobic, which was good advice to hear before we start animating. Because if you can get any kind of edits or correct mistakes at the thumbnailing and storyboard stage, that'll save you so many headaches. Start thinking about how things are going to move, where characters are going to go on screen, how many seconds each shot's going to last. The storyboards are the roots. That's where your tree is growing. You have to have strong roots. If your roots are weak and the storyboards are just junk, then the tree is going to grow off all at an angle and it's all going to be ruined. Getting the foundation is paramount. The next part is the trunk, which is the extension of the storyboards, and this is the animatic. The animatic is simply the storyboards timed to the soundtrack. This is nailing down the timing, nailing down when things are going to show up and how long they show up for. And once you see things actually moving to a soundtrack or see how long clips are going to last, you get an idea for the pacing. You can get some idea of the pacing at the storyboard stage, but it's not until you get to the animatic that you can really edit and tighten down things. As your creative process is growing, branches start growing out. This is essentially the animation stage. These are the rough characters, like all the rough movements, all the basic keyframes, everything that defines the story beats and the storytelling poses. And the branches start growing out more branches and little twigs, and these are the in-between drawings that go in between your key frames and makes everything smoother. Also within this branching out process is the backgrounds, where you set the characters in and coloring the backgrounds and making sure that the characters don't clash with the background colors. Since it was all black and white, it was all about contrast to make sure that the characters were defined by their contrast. So Venom was purely black, so we had to draw white outlines on Venom so he didn't blend in with darker parts of the backgrounds. So the basic animation is done. The tree, you have the skeleton of the tree, but you want to pretty it up. You want to make it more beautiful to look at. And this is where the leaves start growing. And the leaves are basically the cleanup stage, polishing, compositing, coloring, adding the finishing touches that make the cartoon, a finished piece. As long as everything else is solid, your foundation's solid, like even if you screw this part up, it still won't be terrible, but you can also make it so much better if you do this stage properly. So it is extremely important. Every stage is extremely important. And as your tree's growing, there's strong winds and storms, and I like to think of the wind as like your emotions, your internal doubts, because the creative process isn't just a matter of technique. It's not just about learning skills to create things. It's also psychological problems. It's also things like, yes, you have the ability to make something, but if you don't think you can, then you won't, or you'll procrastinate, or maybe there's too much pressure on yourself. Something that's important is to just let the sun shine through, have some fun. If the process becomes overly stressful, then the quality of the work is just going to feel strained. Like you have to be able to play jazz with it, improvise a little bit, let it grow organically, turn the editor off in your head. And then there's the problem of overworking things. Like if you water a tree too much, it's going to drown. So maybe you're on a roll and you're so happy you're getting all this progress done, but at a certain stage you have to turn the faucet off. You have to let the tree breathe a little bit. You have to take breaks or you're going to get burnt out. So it takes a lot of time and effort to create something. You have to toil in the mud before you can reap a harvest. Whenever you see a finished piece of work, you don't see all the sweat and doubt and pain that went into making what you are seeing as a consumer. If you're producing something for the first time, you might get discouraged thinking, wow, it's a lot harder than you thought it would be. But no, it's supposed to be hard. Everything that's worthwhile is hard. It's a matter of doing things in logical steps, piece by piece, that makes it actually doable. While animation is hard, it's worthwhile to see all those static frames come together and dance as living, breathing things in the end. If you got anything out of this video, please be sure to Betty boop that like button. I'm working on a couple more City of Venom behind the scenes videos, so be sure to super smash that subscribe bell. Also, on my Patreon, you can get some goodies. When you join the Artistic Aliens tier, you can watch the full Venom storyboard, animatic, and download high-resolution ebooks. These ebooks show you the art and design from the City of Venom cartoon. If you haven't seen City of Venom yet, well, what are you doing watching this video? Stop being a little April Fool and go watch the City of Venom cartoon. I'm adding inflections to my voice to make the outro more interesting and to hide the pain. Links are in the description and the pinned comment.